The Tennessee Titans start phase 3 of the offseason this week, and while Cam Ward should get the most reps, Will Levis should be next in line. I'll explain on today's edition of Locked On Titans.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland. Titans fans, on today's show, I am going to get you guys ready for phase 3 of the offseason. The Tennessee Titans step up the level of competition this week. I'm going to tell you why I think Will Levis needs to get a lot of opportunities. I'll explain how that fits with the other quarterbacks. Also, we'll talk about the battles that we need to be watching on the roster, and I'll remind you of all of the new that the Tennessee Titans will have out on the field. Before we dive into all of it, do want to thank you for making Locked On Titans your first listen each and every day. Remember, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day. Speaking of every day, shout out to my everydayers out there tuning in Monday through Friday. Couldn't do it without you guys. If you aren't an everydayer, you need to be one. We got phase 3 of OTAs this week and next week. We got mandatory minicamp right around the corner, and then training camp will be here before you know it. It may be the off season, but there's no off season here on Locked On Titans. So again, make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day. With that being said, Will Levis must get his opportunities in Tennessee Titans OTAs. He must get his opportunities now that we're getting into phase 3 and things are set to change a little bit. Now, I know that this may sound weird. Tyler, you're the guy who's been raving and ranting for weeks about how the Titans can't give any of Cam Ward's opportunities to Will Levis, about how Will Levis needs to be traded, needs to be off the roster, this and that. How could you possibly get on here and say that the Titans need to make sure that Will Levis gets his throws? Well, it's this simple. We need to have a discussion about how the rep distribution needs to be broken down. And then it'll make a lot of sense. But why? Why does it matter now? Why is phase 3 different? Let's talk about that first. Because phase 3 of the offseason is where the Tennessee Titans can, as a team, legally do 7-on-7 and 11-on-11 drills as a full team with the veterans. Rookie minicamp, you could do 7-on-7 and stuff like that with the rookies. But as a full team with the rookies and the veterans, phase 3 is the first chance that they get to do, again, 7-on-7, 11-on-11. It's not full pads. It's not live, but this is the closest to actual football that we are going to get until training camp. So if you're going to say that, the earlier stuff doesn't matter because it's just individual, they're pushing sleds, they're doing strength and conditioning, they're doing individual drills and stuff like that. If you're saying that stuff doesn't matter because it's not true football, well, this has to be the first off-season work for the Titans that does matter because it is full team type activities. So this is where things are going to matter more as to who's getting the reps. How many reps are they getting? Are they repping with the first team? Are they gaining chemistry with their receivers? Are they, working through all the things that happen? This is when it actually matters the most. This is when the importance level ratcheted up to a new level, okay? This is when it matters more. So Brian Callahan said last week that so far the quarterbacks have been splitting the reps evenly because it's just individual work, just getting throws in, working on your drops and stuff. But he said that is likely going to change this week that we're in right now, phase 3. Now the reps actually matter more. You can't just can't give even reps to Tim Boyle as you do Cam Ward. You can't do that now. But how are the reps going to be split out? So that's why it's more important because Brian Callahan even said, hey, the rep distribution probably going to change now that we're getting into more true team football activities. But what should that be? Well, look, I don't know what the rep distribution is typically in an offseason. Like when Logan Woodside was the backup to Ryan Tannehill, and Ryan Tannehill was clearly the starting quarterback, like going into 2021. Does the starting quarterback get 70% of the reps? Does he get 60% of the reps? Now, I know some of you are like, wait, it's the starting quarterback. They should be getting every rep. That's not how it works, all right? The reason that you have 3 or 4 quarterbacks in a training camp is because your starting quarterback can literally not throw every single pass that needs to be thrown throughout an off-season activity or throughout an off-season program or training camp or mini camp. Or you can't do that. That's insanity. So let's just, for conversation point, say the starting quarterback usually gets, in a normal situation like, Josh Allen with the Bills right now, or Baker Mayfield with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, or even Sam Darnold in Seattle, Brock Purdy with Mac Jones. Let's say the starting quarterback gets 60% of the reps in phase 3. And then the backup quarterback would get 30% of the reps. And then the third string quarterback, the camp arm, would get 10%. Let's say that's just for conversation, let's say that's the divvy out. Well, the point that I'm making here with Will Levis is Cam Ward needs that 60%. So that aligns with everything that I said before of they can't waste Cam Ward's opportunities on Will Levis. But the backup quarterback still needs to throw a lot in the offseason, in mini camps, in training camp. So what I'm saying is they need to treat Cam Ward like the starting quarterback and give him the starting quarterback lion's share of the reps. But Will Levis should not be pushed to the side and get the 10% and be the third string quarterback. Will Levis needs to be treated like quarterback 2, and he needs to get 30% of the reps. And here's why. Because it's best for the Titans to get the best version of Will Levis, even if the best version of Will Levis is not going to be on the Titans long term. It's that simple. Do you want Will Levis to not improve at all from last year and then go into the preseason with no improvements? Do you want Will Levis to have zero chemistry with the wide receivers he's going to be throwing with in the preseason? God forbid the Titans don't send Will Levis off the roster in a trade before the season starts if Levis has to actually play and be the backup quarterback, which I don't think is going to happen. I don't believe it. I don't buy it. I don't want it to happen. But not everything that I believe and want and this and that is what happens. Maybe the Titans truly do keep Will Levis as the backup. Well, if that's the case, then he needs to be prepared as a backup. So whether it's to get the best version of Will Levis that you could possibly have in joint practices, in the preseason, with the idea that you're ultimately going to move on from him. Heck, it could even happen during the season, I guess. With the idea you want to get the best version of Will Levis because that's going to be the best version or the best thing for the Tennessee Titans. So you need to get him acclimated with the rest of his teammates. You need to get him improved and playing his best football. Look at what happened with Malik Willis last year. We all swore up and down Malik Willis isn't an NFL player. And the Tennessee Titans improved Malik Willis to a point, and Malik deserves his credit for working hard too. But under Brian Callahan, Malik Willis got to a point where he was mightily improved in the preseason, and that led to the Tennessee Titans getting a draft pick for a player that they didn't intend to keep around. Whether they should have kept him around or not is a different discussion, but the same philosophy is applied to Will Levis. So my only point here is I want Cam Ward to get starting quarterback reps. Cam Ward should get starting quarterback reps, 60, 70%, whatever it is, typically around the NFL. But all I'm saying is second in line, the second most amount of reps for a quarterback, that has to be Will Levis. Let me know if you guys agree, but now let's talk about camp battles. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Look, the NBA playoffs are in full swing. Every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Me personally, I told you guys all along, I'm rooting for the New York Knicks. I want the Knicks to win the championship. I thought they were dead in the water, but they're back, baby. The New York Knicks are back, and I'm going to back them with the money line, with the spread, Karl Anthony Towns going crazy out here, dropping double-doubles. I might get a little player props on him. Either way, if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet, and if it wins, you're going to get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Titans fans, let's continue today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast, previewing phase 3 of the offseason for the Tennessee Titans. We talked about how the quarterback reps need to be divvied up. I want Cam Ward to get the full amount of starting quarterback reps, whatever that happens to be, whatever percentage that is around the NFL. That's what I want Cam Ward to get. But for the backup role, QB2, that has to be Will Levis, and you can let Brandon Allen and Tim Boyle fight over that final 10% of reps or whatever it happens to be. I simply don't care. Neither of those guys are guys that I think the Titans should worry about getting reps for or anything like that. Get them to Levis, get them to Cam. That's what needs to happen. But now we need to look at the guys that they're going to be throwing to, the guys that are going to be on defense, some of the camp battles that matter the most when we get into real football activity. And again, it's something that I'm going to continue to hammer home throughout the episode. Phase 3 of the offseason totally ratchets up the competition level, the reality level, the realism of what real football is going to be about. Phase 2 that the Titans have just been in is all individual work, strength and conditioning, film work, meetings, stuff like that. They aren't really able to do full team veterans and rookies, 7-on-7, 11-on-11, offense on defense. They're not allowed to do any of that stuff. So now they are. What are we looking for? Well, I've talked about it. I'm going to continue talking about it, the skill position battle. And look, we've talked a lot about the young players. We talked about Chimdike and Alec Iomanor and Xavier Restrepo. We've talked about the rookies. But now the veterans are intermingled with them. Now you got to talk about Van Jefferson. Now you got to talk about Bryce Oliver heading into his second year, who a lot of people close to the team are high on. You got to talk about, I said Van Jefferson already, so you don't got to talk about him again. But anyway, we know that Calvin Ridley and Tyler Lockett are going to, I almost said Mason Kinsey. And I stopped myself. My brain was like, wait a minute, don't say that. Let's be real here. Shout out Mason Kinsey, who seems like an awesome dude. I hope he stays with the team on the practice squad and stuff, but he's not going to make the 53-man roster unless there's a bunch of injuries. Oh, Traylon Burks is, no, not doing that. The ghost of Burks, not factoring him into these conversations. But we know that Calvin Ridley and Tyler Lockett are going to be locks. They are locks, in my opinion. And I'm going to do my locks, bubble, and long shots with the roster next Monday and Tuesday, coming out of the weekend of OTAs. Do my first 53-man roster prediction for you guys, so make sure that you check that out at the beginning of next week. But with Calvin Ridley and Tyler Lockett at the top of the depth chart, or at least locks to make the team, in my opinion, who are going to be the next group of guys? Who's the next wide receiver? Because, like I said, I think that Alec Iomanor is in a perfect setup to be the number 3 wide receiver for the Titans, because he is a big-bodied X wide receiver. And Tyler Lockett and Calvin Ridley are both Z or slot guys. Neither of them can be the big-bodied physical X wide receiver. Now, Van Jefferson is big enough to do that. But at some point, we have to acknowledge, Van Jefferson is just an NWI level player. There's no upside there. He's not going to turn into a certified starter. He's not a game breaker. He's just another veteran guy. And I think there's a place for that, but that's your wide receiver or 4 or 5, in my opinion. Van Jefferson isn't good enough to be a wide receiver 3. He's not a good enough playmaker. Now, I said, and I agree with this, of course, because I said it, but Van Jefferson will probably be the 3rd starting wide receiver on day 1. But when we look at how close this battle can get, and that's not, a guaranteed thing. One of these young guys could step up. Now, I think it's going to be harder for a Chimdike or a Xavier Restrepo, because again, your top 2 wide receivers, who I think are locks to make the team, and Calvin Ridley and Tyler Lockett, they both play Z and slot. So anybody who is basically a Z or a slot, it's going to be tougher. But that's why Io is the guy that I look at because he can give you that X wide receiver position. Burks is not going to be healthy to really challenge, in my opinion. Van Jefferson does not have any upside. Io Manor could be better than Van Jefferson right now. I don't think it would be a crazy thing to think. So I'm really watching the wide receiver position. Who separates themselves? Who steps up? Who has a good rapport with Cam Ward? Who instantly knows what they're doing? Who's deep into their playbook? Who's going to step up out of that 5 group of guys? Van Jefferson, Chim DK, Alec Io Manor, Bryce Oliver, Xavier Restrepo. Out of those 5 guys, who's going to... And shoot, Jaquan Jackson. I should probably put him in there. James Prochet, who we have not talked about a single second since he got signed. He is just a complete afterthought. Like, a lot of competition. And then a tight end. I think Chigakonkwo is Chigakonkwo, and who he is and what he does is kind of solidified. But Gunnar Helm, Josh Wiley, I'm betting on Gunnar Helm, of course. I've been high on Gunnar Helm all season, but, you know, that's the Josh Wiley rule. So that battle between those two, can the rookie come in and take it away from Josh Wiley going into year 3? Very excited to see that. Now, on the defensive side of the ball, we talked about the front 7, okay? Femi Oladipo against Lorenzo Carter is what I'm looking at edge. Because Draymond Jones is a different kind of edge. He's smaller at 6'3". Now, he's 260, so he's a big body, but he's only 6'3". And Mike Borgonzi talked in a recent podcast appearance and even said, like, you know, he can rush over the guard. He could play a little bit of edge. He's kind of been a tweener. I think if we're talking about starting edge, like early down starting edge rusher, first snap, like I said before, I think the battle is between Femi and Lorenzo Carter. And look, Lorenzo Carter is a good role player on early downs to set the edge against the run. He's 6'5", 260, like he's a big physical edge setter, and that's what the Titans needed last year. But Femi is 6'3" and some change and 260, and like, you know, maybe Femi comes along quicker than we expect. Maybe Femi comes along quicker than should even be expected. You know, like that could happen. So I'm just going to see how quickly Femi comes in right away and kind of establishes himself as, hey, you're going to have to play me. Because if he has a good enough summer in this phase, and then when we get to training camp, Femi could just start from day one, and that would be great news for the Tennessee Titans. If you have Femi and Arden Key as your primary early down edges, you can rotate Lorenzo Carter in here and there to give guys breaks, because Arden Key is not a great edge setter against the run on early downs. So if Femi was good enough and you could have Lorenzo Carter and Femi Oladipo as your early down edge setters, and then bring in Draymond Jones and Arden Key as more of your rush edges early on while Femi is still developing, that would be elite, man. That would be not elite like that's an elite group, but that would be a great way for things to break out for the Titans, who do not have a very good edge rusher position. That would be the best outcome possible for the Titans there. Now, at linebacker, we've talked about it. The young guys next to Cody Barton, James Williams, Cedric Gray, the 2 rookies from last year going into year 2. Otis Reese going into year 3 as an undrafted free agent. David Benda from Texas, the linebacker, undrafted free agent this year. Very interested in seeing what he has to bring to the table. The Titans signed Anthony Ojri from waivers off of the Patriots. Maybe that's somebody who can come in and make some noise. I'm just going to look at that linebacker group and be like, how bad is it going to be for the Titans? Do any of these guys make a leap? And I think phase 3 is where we need to start seriously paying attention to things and being like, hey, are guys stepping up? Are they prepared? Are they ready? Do they know the playbook? Do they know their role? Are they more comfortable? Like, that matters. And then finally, special teams. Like, who is the Titans returner? They keep saying that Chim DK can return, and he returned in college, so maybe. But Mason Kinsey found a way to make the roster at points and times last year just because he's able to catch a punt and then fall down. Tajay Spears did some kick return, but with his injury concerns, is that something they really want him doing? James Prochet, who I mentioned earlier, he was brought in and got mentioned for his return ability. It's something he's been able to do. Can he carve out a roster spot by being a great returner? Kyle Mullings, probably not going to be ready to go right away, the rookie running back out of Michigan, but he's had some return history in his past, high school and stuff like that. So there are a lot of options, but I don't know if any of them are good. So who separates themselves? Who's somebody who's like, oh, that's going to be our returner? I hope that it's clear early on in this process who that is. But hopefully phase 3, we start to hear more about who's getting those opportunities so we can start to narrow down who the Titans are seriously looking at. But with that in mind, there's a lot of new. There's a lot of new out there for the Titans. So we're going to talk about what's new, how new everything is. And also, they're just a couple of players who I don't think you should expect to see at a voluntary workout. Titans fans, let's cap off today's Phase 3 preview edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. We talked about the quarterback rep distribution, and I know it sounds crazy when you first hear it, but Will Levis needs to get a good amount of reps as the backup quarterback. Make sure Cam gets all that he's supposed to get, but Levis needs to be QB2. We talked about the camp battles to watch on offense, on defense, the skill positions, the front seven, kick returner, punt returner, all that, but I want to stay on special teams here because one thing that I think we forget as we go through the offseason, because free agency was so long ago and, coaching staff changes were so long ago and everything is just a blur as you're going through it. There's a lot of changes for the Titans. Like, the Titans signed, 20 guys. They drafted 9 guys. They've gotten 5 or 6 guys off waivers. That's 35, 40 new players on this roster. And that's what the Titans needed to do. They needed to have massive turnover. I think they need to continue to have massive turnover. This roster isn't good enough anywhere for the Titans to justify not picking up a good player. And as another reminder, the Tennessee Titans are number 1 in the waiver claim until the season starts. I do believe. So all offseason, throughout training camp cuts, throughout this summer break that we're about to go on after mandatory minicamp in 15 days, after all of this, the Titans are going to have a ton of new players who they picked up off waivers, who got cut on other teams. So the turnover is going to continue, but there's so much new. All right, think about it. Special teams. John Fossil, Bones Fossil, one of the most renowned special teams coaches in the entire NFL, now coaching the Tennessee Titans special teams. Joey Sly, Johnny Hecker in. Out goes Ryan Stonehouse. Out with Nick Folk. Brand new special teams core members. Looking for brand new returners. Brand new coach. Everything about the special teams is brand new, and by God, it should be, right? It should be, right? The Titans had an all-time NFL history, all-time bad special teams unit last year. So, yeah, it's probably a good idea to totally revamp everything about special teams. I'm totally on board with that. That's absolutely the move. But it is all new. So it'll be interesting to see what the Titans do there, how they operate on special teams, what their goals are, how guys look, and again, who they try out at returner. Cannot wait to figure that out. But another huge new thing is the offensive line. I mentioned it yesterday, but think about it for real. A year ago today, we're talking about Sadiq Charles versus Dylan Radins and NPF versus Jalen Duncan and John Ojukwu and Leroy Watson and Jerron Christian. Think about that. Think about where we were. But now the offensive line has Dan Moore, who you guys know I wasn't super high on the Dan Moore contract, but Dan Moore's been a starting offensive lineman in the NFL. He's better than NPF and Jalen Duncan and these guys. So there's that. J.C. Latham gets moved to right tackle, and now we get confirmation that J.C. Latham is about 340 pounds, hoping to get down. I'm sorry, but looking at Latham, hard to believe that dude is 340 pounds with how chiseled he is right now. He was on Bussin' with the Boys, the Taylor Lewan and Will Compton podcast, and he was saying that last year, the Seattle game or something like that, he was mentioning, maybe joint practices, but he said he was 360 pounds. That was his college weight. That's heavy. And he talked about how, I had to make changes. He wants to get down even 10 to 15 more pounds, 325, 330. I'm all for a mobile, motivated, more natural at right tackle J.C. Latham. You add that to Kevin Zietler. Peter Skoronski, man, is still underrated by some in the fan base. A lot of people just didn't want to like that pick. But, man, Peter Skoronski is going to bully people this year. Big year for Pete going into year 3. He's got to take that massive leap forward. Also, where's Lloyd Cushenberry at? I bet that they won't have him participate in this stuff, which is such an opportunity for like a Jackson Slater and a Corey Levin. Like, huge opportunity there. Jackson Slater specifically to get reps at center. But with that in mind, there are some players who you should not expect to see out there. Number 1, L'Jarius Sneed and Lloyd Cushenberry. Sneed still rehabbing. Cushenberry still rehabbing. They said he should be ready for training camp. I don't know how I feel about that or how confident I am in that, but I do not expect Lloyd Cushenberry to participate in this. Jeffery Simmons is not going to be there. He's not even going to be in attendance. He's the highest paid player on the team, the veteran. You could argue, hey, he's a leader. He should be there leading the team, especially with how the season went last year. And after Brian Callahan said we need people to, not just lead by example, but to lead vocally, you could argue Jeffery Simmons needs to be there. But also, Simmons would tell you that he has his process, he has his plan. Well, Jeff, you've missed games, significant games the last few years because you've been getting injured. Maybe the way you do it is not the right way. Maybe you need to come in and follow the Titans' plan. Why not? But either way, I wouldn't expect Jeffery Simmons to be there. Amani Hooker is another guy who I'm not certain if he'll be there. He seems like a really team-oriented guy. So I would bet, if I had to bet, that Amani Hooker will be there. But you could make an argument that he wouldn't be with how much of a veteran he is. Kevin Zietler. If Zietler doesn't show up, that's fine with me. Let Blake Hance, let Jackson Slater get more opportunities. I would love the offensive line to get that chemistry and already be working together and everything like that. But the reality is, Kevin Zietler is 35 years old. He's one of the top 10 right guards in the entire NFL. If he doesn't want to come to voluntary OTAs in June, I'm not going to be mad about Kevin Zietler not doing that. He's earned that right to not come if he doesn't want to and do things on his own. And then finally, both of these guys are there. So I expect them to be there unless there's something, that they have to do that's different, some personal issue. But Tony Pollard and Calvin Ridley, if they weren't there, I wouldn't bat an eye. I wouldn't be frustrated by that, whatever. But both of those guys have already done interviews at the offseason activities. They're there already. So they seem fully in. So I honestly, looking at the roster, I can only see maybe 5 or 6 guys at max that could justifiably not come to a voluntary workout and it be okay with the coaching staff. Nobody else has come anywhere close to earning that luxury to work out on their own. Absolutely not. So should be near full attendance for the Titans, with the exception is maybe besides the injured guys like Burks and Sneed and Cush and Kal-El Mullings and Kevin Winston and stuff like that from the draft who are still rehabbing. Most of these guys, even Colton Dallas back out on the field. Good for him, but man, poor guy. Either way, I'm so excited. Phase 3, finally here. I'm going to be here tomorrow to recap it all for you guys, but that's going to do it for me today, folks. As always, I am your host, Tyler Rowland, and this was Locked On Titans.